And now for the Honorable Parliamentary Secretary, the Honorable Member, Ms. Sarah Browne.
Mr. Speaker, it is quite the irony to speak after the Honorable Chief Whip, Honorable Christopher Jones, as I have been vindicated. The Honorable Member spoke glowingly of youth and opportunities for youth, yet at the age of 29, as a young woman, I was denied my right to stand here for the past 4 years to represent my people. So today, Mr. Speaker, I rise with pride and honor to wholeheartedly support and endorse Budget 2025 as presented by Honorable Dr. Ashni Singh to the National Assembly under an appropriate theme, a secure, prosperous, and sustainable Guyana. Budget 2025, like every other PPPC budget, lives up to expectations, and its passage will ensure that every single commitment made in our manifesto is fulfilled, and it proves to all Guyanese that we are a government and a party to be trusted, unlike the APNU-AFC, who failed in living up to their promises in 5 years, much less 100 days. Quite the opposite to us on this side of the House. Mr. Speaker, firstly, I must commend His Excellency Dr. Mohammed Irfan Ali and his entire cabinet, the President and his entire cabinet for ensuring.
Honorable Member, I determine how it is used. Honorable Members, you can stay away from that and talk about your regime or your government.
Mr. Speaker, I believe I'm going to have to write a long memo on this issue because the President...
Honorable Minister, you're standing on a point of order. So, please.
As well as Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, the Standing Order 41 in regards to the President. The President is the head of the Parliament, and therefore it's impossible in the National Assembly, a government or anybody else, referring to the President as the head of that government and also the head of the Parliament. So we cannot, what the Standing Order says at 41.8 is if you're using the name of the President to influence the Parliament. But a statement of fact that the President said so-and-so.
Thank you, Honorable Member Ms. Teixeira. Thank you very much.
I intend to write you a long memo on this.
Yes, you can. Honorable Members, I am very firm on 4-1-7. And I allow the Honorable Minister to make an intervention, though I don't consider it a point of order. 4-1-7 again says, the President's name shall not be used to influence the Assembly. So I will determine that on either side. And if I'm not allowing it, well, Honorable Member Mr. McCoy, you can always bring a no confidence motion against the Speaker and put the Parliament where you want it to be. Where you want it to be. So please, I ask that we conform to two things. 4-1-7 and the list of parliamentary words. And it's been going great that we have been a bit consistent with not using these words. Honorable Member Ms. Sarah Browne, you will continue.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to commend the government of Guyana for reaching out to every corner of our country despite geographic constraints and unforeseen circumstances such as the COVID-19 pandemic, natural disasters, and other threats beyond our control. Mr. Speaker, like everything else, when the PPPC presents a budget, it is not crafted by hearsay or guess. It is crafted after consultation with real people, being on the ground, engaging with communities, and listening to what is important to the people. Mr. Speaker, I noticed that on today's agenda that my colleague and esteemed in-law on the other side of the House, unfortunately, as Geographic MP for Region 1, born and bred, is scheduled to speak. and I'm certain that he will seek to cast a shadow and discredit the work done by the government on the transformation and progress that Region 1 has experienced for the past 4 years. However, Mr. Speaker, I wish to preempt by asking that MP how many villages he visited as a member of parliament to meet with his constituency and hear from the ground what are the issues. Along with the Honourable Member, Mr. Christopher Jones, who did not visit any of the communities in Region 1 to hold consultations or to keep meetings, he will never know what has changed. When he asks what has changed, he will never know because he has never visited any of the villages across the region. And so today, when I will speak about the development and transformation across the 87 villages in Region 1, from Baramita in the Matakai sub-district to Waramuri in the Muruka sub-district, bearing in mind that Maburumatong is not Region 1, as was the perception of the Granger-led administration, so much so that they hired multiple planes to take 30 persons to Mabruma to plant 1 tree and then fly it back to Georgetown as part of a tree planting exercise, all in a day's work. Mr. Speaker, Georgetown is not the 592. Georgetown is not Guyana. Mr. Speaker, I was privileged to struggle alongside Geographic MP, now Minister Colin Crowell. As an opposition MP, he visited every single village in Region 1, high water or low water. He held consultations and he brought to this House verified concerns and recommendations coming from the source, the people on the ground. And now again in government, we are doing the same thing. As a matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, in opposition, many of our MPs, including Minister 𝐁𝐔𝐃𝐆𝐄, would have been to far-flung and remote villages across the hinterland, and we're doing it again in government. Mr. Speaker, I think that I may need to probably ask for a swab to clear my ear, because I cannot be hearing what is happening, what is saying from the other side, as in the benefits coming to friends and families and favorite. Mr. Speaker, these cannot be the same persons who said that they needed to hire a doctor that spoke Spanish and they wanted one that was PNC. These can't be the same persons, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, are they then saying to us that once you are a part of this party, that we cannot access or we cannot be a part of the good life? No thanks to Mr. David Granger, former president. Mr. Speaker, as Amerindians living in Guyana's hinterland, we traditionally benefit directly from the Ministry of Amerindian Affairs, which has a robust welfare program that rescues and supports hundreds of Amerindians who encounter difficult circumstances and for different reasons are often stranded in Georgetown, where we are guaranteed a lodging, meals, and a safe passage back home. And Mr. Speaker, this is not done on Facebook for likes, it's not done for shares, but it's done because we have a responsibility which we take very seriously as a government. Mr. Speaker, many of us have had to seek the intervention of this program to aid in funeral expenses when our loved ones transition while receiving medical attention in the city. And to quote Minister Susan, from the cradle to the grave, which is costly, often depending on the villages from which we come. In addition, Mr. Speaker, the Amerindian Development Fund, an initiative of our government under the Ministry of Amerindian Affairs, has always been a lifeline for our villages, whereby we not only rehire the 2,000 CSOs that were dismissed by the APNU AFC, an act that neither the APNU nor the AFC apologized to us for, but we increased the numbers and we raised the stipend from $30,000 to $40,000. This program, along with the Pathway program, that we benefit from in the hinterland as well, empowers thousands of young people in the hinterland. And speaking of this program, Mr. Speaker, it really warms my heart and it hits close to home, as I have witnessed firsthand how this program uplifted many, including one of my best friends. Annette Ganesh, a young single parent, started out as a CSO when it was first launched under our government, being assigned to work with the Santa Rosa Village Council in the area of governance. And so, Mr. Speaker, her story began. When APNU took office, Along with 2,000 others, she was dismissed, but she didn't give up. As an empowered youth, she contested in the village elections and was elected as the area councillor for her area. And today, she is serving as the community development officer, working with village councils to transform their communities. Mr. Speaker, there are many untold stories, and this is the hope, the light at the end of the tunnel that was taken from us when they disbanded this program. A starting point, a hope that we restored when we took office once again. Mr. Speaker, the MP on the other side will not tell us of the $1.633 billion in carbon credit transferred to us in Region 1 in 2023, and the $1.658 billion in 2024 to support villages, whether in livelihood, economic projects, or other projects as given by the villages. Mr. Speaker, to many, this may just sound like a large sum of money. But for us, it is transforming our lives every single day and uplifting us to new heights. For Parkees alone in the Moruco Sub-District in 2023, electrical cables were installed in 84 homes, and for the first time, they were able to access electricity generated to complement the solar panels we give to every single household in the hinterland. And still, they had monies left over for food security and agriculture projects. And in 2024, they invested in livelihood projects to make their lives a bit easier. Let's turn to Mabruma. In Batero, for example, home to Honorable Ronald Cox. In the first year, they developed their sports ground, purchased a 60 horsepower outboard engine, invested in the women poultry farm and a housing development project. And last year, they continued the housing development program. Barabina Mabruma, the first year they bought a bus, 100 water tanks for residents, wired homes so persons can have access to power, and establishing a food processing plant and establish a nature resort. Baramita, for example, in the Matakai Sub-District, they invested in a wood miser, an ATV, and a poultry project, and they're yet to spend their 2024 carbon credits money. Mr. Speaker, I only spoke on 4 villages and highlighted 17 projects funded by carbon credits. Just imagine what is happening in all 87 communities in Region 1 alone. Mr. Speaker, I have said it before, that I am one proud Locono sitting on this side of the House among the best to help right the injustices, bring relief, and help to rebuild after 5 years neglect under the APNU-AFC that took us back to a starting point, which was expected, since even before assuming office when they held a parliamentary majority for 3 years, they used it, Mr. Speaker, to slash the ADF from the budget, knowing fully well that we depended on this intervention to enhance our communities. Mr. Speaker, what to expect from someone who calls us greedy for wanting our own lands, and in the same breath tell us that if we want more lands, we should not benefit from oil resources. Mr. Speaker, we are still awaiting an apology. No surprise, we aren't going to get one. But Mr. Speaker, better is here on this side of the House. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to quote His Excellency, I didn't call his name, on the occasion of Amerindian Heritage Month 2020, when he said, "My government takes its obligation seriously to ensure that the benefits derived from oil and gas resources in the coming years are equitably distributed among all of our people." Mr. Speaker, we got our lands, we were given direct transfers from carbon credits, and we are benefiting from oil and gas under this government. We are benefiting from new schools, new hospitals, enhanced and new infrastructure. Yes, we are benefiting from $55,000 per child in school this year. Mr. Speaker, ophthalmologists are visiting every community to ensure that children and the elderly, their eyes are tested and they're given prescription lenses. Mr. Speaker, updated textbooks are arriving. The hot meal programs are thriving and they're expanding. Pensioners have gotten their increase, Mr. Speaker. In 2024, 2,642 pensioners received their pension and 6,679 received the public assistance. Mr. Speaker, adults over 18 are getting their $100,000 cash grant. COVID grants were issued. Flood relief was given. And we will be benefiting from the measures in Budget 2025, including free university education. What y'all could tell us in this one Guyana? Honorable Member Mr. Jones, as Director of Youth, how many playfields or youth groups have you supported in your tenure in the hinterland? None. I'd like to report that our government supported over 200 villages in the hinterland in playfield upgradal or support to young people. Mr. Speaker, they claim to love public servants, but they took away the cash grant to school children, the bonus to discipline services, they taxed water and electricity, education, and medical supplies purchased by public servants. They deny them the right to access a house lot, to buy a motor car, and in 5 years, they impoverish public servants, Mr. Speaker. We are giving free university education, and national service is not a requirement. The APNU-AFC increased admin fee and tuition fees, and then they claim that they have love for the UG students. Mr. Speaker, I can safely say that every single sector is working in overdrive to ensure that we are in a better position. And this is as a result of putting the task in the hands of young, fit, and proper leaders compared to a geriatric cabinet. In Region 1, 17 new schools were constructed or are under construction, including Hosororo, Kebano, Warmuri, and Matthews Ridge. In Region 1 alone, from 2020 to 2024, we trained 328 teachers. In health, the Comarca District Hospital at once had Panadol Secure for every ailment under the APNU. And let's not forget the AFC, you are a part of this too. They are now performing life-saving surgeries and offers many services which will soon be enhanced with the construction of a brand new state-of-the-art facility. And similar developments are ongoing across the region. We introduced telemedicine capabilities in far-flung communities such as Pawaikuru, Tasuwini, Imbatero, Warapoka, Blackwater, Savannah, just to name a few. Ministry of Agriculture, the entire Muruka River, as I speak, it's currently being dredged as requested by residents to make our lives easier. 52 shade houses were constructed across the region, and 200 acres of citrus are currently under cultivation, while agro-processing facilities were constructed in Comarca and White Creek in the Mabruma Sub-District. And how could we forget, Mr. Speaker, the MV Militia, a manifesto commitment fulfilled. And, Mr. Speaker, this only scratches the surface. Mr. Speaker, I am happy to report that most of the ICT hubs across the region are up and it's functioning. And we can now access free Wi-Fi and the Gold Online Scholarship, which many of us has taken up. Mr. Speaker, a few days ago, I was chatting with a young lady from my village and proceeded to ask her about her employment status. She said to me that she never applied for a job because she doesn't have CXC. But what made me beam with pride was when she proceeded to say that despite that, she now has a certificate from Gold, and she now wants to send in an application so she can have a job.
Wonderful. Thousands of stories like that countrywide.
This is the vision that our government has for our young people. And, Mr. Speaker, our young people in turn, they are taking these opportunities and they are making hay while the sun shines.
Wonderful.
Under this government.
So you can shine more, you'll need an extension to continue to conclude.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask that the honourable member be given 5 minutes to conclude a very good statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Teixeira. Honorable member, you may continue. You have 5 minutes to conclude.
Mr. Speaker, these projects are in addition to the support from Ministry of Agrarian Affairs and the carbon transfers given directly to our village so that we can acknowledge the transformation to which I refer. Mr. Speaker, what is the legacy of the APNU-AFC? What did they do for the people in Region 1? For 5 years, Mr. Speaker, we never saw a minister of government, and for the first time, they levied taxes on items that were once tax-free, including food and basic supplies. $5,000 on a barrel of fuel, raking in millions of dollars in revenue annually. And what did the people of Region 1 get in return? No new school, no new hospital, no employment, no training for our young people, Mr. Speaker. Under this government, last month we graduated 50 CHWs, that's health workers, 18 operating room technicians, and 23 nursing assistants, adding 84 young professionals into the system. And guess what? They were trained right in Region 1. This is our legacy. Mr. Speaker, for those who have not lived the struggle, will not appreciate how far we have come. And for those who insist otherwise, they are stifling their conscience. Many moons ago, Mr. Speaker, a young Amerindian girl was living with her ma when she fell ill with a stroke and was rushed to the hospital. At that time, there was no motor vehicle or hardly motor-powered boats in my village. Upon inquiry, that girl was told that the uncles took her grandmother to the nearest point in a canoe, and using a hammock holding both ends, they took her to the hospital approximately 1 mile, approximately on a 1 mile stretch in the dark of night. Mr. Speaker, when that girl left home on Wednesday morning on a 1 mile stretch, she counted 20 cars on that road that was once a trail. Mr. Speaker, I am that girl, and this is the legacy of our party. Mr. Speaker, I know for a fact that you have visited and worked the ground in those days, so you know of which I speak. And thus, Mr. Speaker, I invite you to visit my village today, and you will tell your own story. Our story is not riddled with a history of undemocratic rule, rigged elections, and injustices. The APNU-AFC had a chance to change their narrative, but instead, they proved to all Guyanese and the international community that they are what we said they are. The same old riggers using a new name. Mr. Speaker, progress must continue, and we are the only government that has a proven track record, tested, approved, and trusted. Mr. Speaker, I commend Budget 2025 to this National Assembly for its passage.